So thank you, Madam Chair. What I think is particularly contemptible is attempts by Liberal members and this Liberal government to say that His Majesty's loyal opposition, who by opposing things, it is an act of loyalty. If we see something bad in a particular piece of legislation, which we do in this legislation, and what my friend probably doesn't understand is what the effect of carbon leakage is. So carbon leakage would mean that Ukraine could not have a carbon tax or a carbon price so low as to attract investment, because that's considered carbon leakage, a company choosing to invest in Ukraine because their carbon tax or carbon price is too low. That's how it's defined. Now, actually, if Ukraine wanted to, and so what Ukraine has is a tiny carbon price on select industries. They do not have a broad-based carbon tax like the punishing carbon tax that this Prime Minister has imposed on Canada, a carbon tax he intends to quadruple as 800,000 Ontarians go to a food bank. It would be the fourth largest city in Ontario, a city entirely dependent on going to a food bank for food. That's what carbon taxes do, Madam Chair. That's what they're doing to Canada. And these Liberal members suggest that our objection to that is somehow not supporting Ukraine. Quite frankly, it's despicable, because this Liberal government granted a waiver, an export permit waiver, for a gas turbine to be exported to use to pump Russian gas. Let that sink in for a minute, everyone. And to the folks in the media who are here today, you should report on this. They allowed a gas turbine to go to help pump Russian gas. What does Russia use to fund its illegal war in Ukraine? The sale of gas and the profits from the sale of gas. They granted the permit, and they have the audacity to sit here and say that somehow us voting against this agreement that is now passed out of committee is somehow betraying Ukraine. No, giving them a gas turbine, giving Russia a gas turbine betrayed Ukraine. And you know what's worse? We now have a report that came out yesterday that Canadian detonators are being used in Russian landmines. That's right, they're so inept and incompetent in applying sanctions that Canadian detonators are finding their way into Russian landmines. Do you know what Russian landmines do? They kill Ukrainian soldiers. So if you want to talk about what's actually harming Ukraine, it's the incompetence of this government. Absolutely shameful, despicable incompetence. And then to try and come into the House of Commons and in committee to suggest that our vote, which did nothing, because guess what? It got to committee. Guess what? It just got out of committee, okay? It's causing no harm whatsoever. We get to oppose bad pieces of legislation. We get to oppose your ideological obsession with carbon taxes, carbon prices, and the misery they've imposed on Canadians. The absolute misery of Canadians. Canadians are skipping meals because of the carbon tax. Farmers are being beaten into submission because of the carbon tax. There are farmers who are paying $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month in carbon taxes. That gets passed on to Canadian consumers. So guess what? Our vote is not doing anything to harm Ukraine. We are principally opposed to you guys ramming in this terminology for the first time ever in a trade agreement. That's what we object to, and we get to object to that. That does not cause a scintilla of harm to Ukraine. But you know what does? Giving them a bloody gas turbine and detonators used in landmines. You guys should all watch what you say, because your behavior on this is despicable and you don't have a leg to stand on.